Chapter 10. Luck, I've discovered, is as wild and unpredictable as anything on the planet. It behaves without logic, even worse, without taste. It's something like a cat that won't come when you call its name, and then tumbles like an overripe apple out of a tree that you happen to be walking under. Doesn't come because you're brilliant, isn't there because you're good, but just because you happen to be walking under a tree. So, I wasn't feeling brilliant as I left 7th Avenue and steered myself onto Berry Street. I simply felt, well, like the luckiest cat alive. The hard part was over. I was only in Chapter 10, but already I was just about to roll up the case. Give it 2 more chapters. In the first one, I'd tumble into Felix's apartment through a beautifully open window. M.B. Despain would be snoring away on the bed, still dressed in his black turtleneck and having a black dream, and I'd instantly find Sandy. That would be Chapter 10. And 11 would be scampering back to Kit and Caboodle, where everyone, Spike, Sue, James, and Antoinette, would be rolling around in pleasure. Antoinette would pay me the locks, and then Sue would cuddle up to me with odd almond eyes and say, "Sammy, my hero." I hurried along the street. Whatever awaited me, the next tricky chapter, full of M.B. Despain, would have nothing to do with that. Reality isn't easy. Fantasy isn't real. And I never read a mystery that ended at Chapter 10. Berry Street, for one thing, is one of those old-fashioned cobblestone streets that goes meandering through the village. It used to be a cow path. I'm not even kidding. Back in the 1700s, when the city was full of farms, a lot of large, thirsty cattle used to run to the Hudson River in the manner that cattle run. Amok would be the word. A kind of sirloin mentality that tramples whatever it will on its way to whatever it wants. Or in other words, the cattle never walked in a straight line. So Berry Street wandered. Like a shoelace that darts in and out of its little holes, the street would occasionally completely disappear and then zag in another direction. In a while, I was totally lost. The street was deserted. The block that was Berry Street had turned into something else without telling me where it turned. The wind shivered through me. There was nobody here to ask. No cats on the windowsills, or nesting around the trees. The houses, 3-story ones, as tidy as little ships, offered nothing of any help. The numbers moved forward very neatly in a row, up to 77 Berry Street, and then that was that. There was no 79. The next number over, on what should have remained Berry Street, was 70 Dithering Way. I boomeranged back and forth, crossing the street again, 77 Berry, crossing the street again, 70 Dithering Way, until I finally got the message and leapt to the top of a garbage pail and beat my head with a paw. I'd been snookered. I'd been had. There was no 79 because there was no 79. The address was pure fiction. I yowled like a man in pain. "Are you sick?" said a voice behind me. "Are you troubled in mind and soul?" I turned. She was calling from a window across the street. A very neat Abyssinian, her fur the color of tea. "I'm just disgusted," I hollered back at her. "Yeah? Join the club." I laughed. "I'm very serious," she said. "I really am. Have you thought about joining Fro?" "Fro?" I said, crossing to her. "No. What's Fro?" "Fro," she said. "The Feline Rights Organization. Our motto is, don't be disgusted by yourself, be disgusted with us." "Uh-huh," I said. "Catchy." She looked me straight in the eye. Close up, she had a taut and rather humorless-looking face, and she scrunched it into a frown. "We're very serious here, you know. We're empowering ourselves and demanding our civil rights. And our first demand is, we don't want to be called cats." "We don't?" I said. "Why? I mean, we are cats, aren't we?" "Yes, but we believe the word cat has been abused." "Abused?" I said, amused. "Well, it certainly isn't funny. Why, in English alone, we've got terrible words with cat. We've got catastrophe, cataclysm, cataract, and catarrh, just to mention the most offensive." "Catarrh?" I said. "Phlegm." "Phlegm?" "The brown yucky stuff you blow when you've got a cold." "Oh, that," I said, grimacing. "So what do you want instead?" "Our solution is to call ourselves feline Americans." I stared at her numbly. "You're kidding me," I hoped. But she was off on another tack. "And another thing," she said. "We don't want to be called pets. We like animal companions." "I'll bet you do," I said. "But we're sort of working it out. I mean, Sweetie Pie and Lulu didn't want to be called animals, but, well, we're working it out." "Good luck for you," I said. "Look, I want to wish you a lot of luck, Miss Mehitabel," she offered. "Only everyone calls me Hitty, which I'm not, of course." "Not?" "Not Hitty. I never hit. I'm completely opposed to violence. I believe we could all of us live in peace if we could reason with one another." "Uh-huh," I said. "You ever try reasoning with a flea?" "I'm not talking about a flea, dear. I'm talking about, I know, about political philosophy. And I am trying to get rid of a dumb flea." I attacked it where it gnawed at me and watched it fall to the ground. "Forget it," I said. "Look, I'm just not a political animal." "We're all political animals." I spotted another flea. "No, we're not," I said disgustedly. "Only the sheep and goats. A sheep because it'll follow anything, and a goat because it'll swallow anything." "And a cat," she said triumphantly. "A cat, because a cat is always an independent party." I looked at her now and grinned. "You're pretty good, you know." "Yes, I do know. In fact, you want to hear me speak at the rally? 7:30, Sunday night? Right over there," she said, and pointed into a blue puzzle of shadows. "On the other corner of Berry Street?" "The other—" I held my breath. I said, "What other corner of Berry Street?" "The other corner of Berry Street. You know," she said. "The one that's sort of hidden behind the trees." "Behind the trees!" I said dementedly. "Listen, I gotta go." "Sunday night," she called after me. "We're trying to get the press. We'll be on television." "Sure you will." I grinned, like a diplomat, and scampered into the night. Berry Street, the sneaky little snake, had curved around and disappeared in its own shadow. Those cattle were really nuts. Or I'd better put it this way. Those sirloin Americans were directionally impaired. In any case, Berry Street was hidden behind the trees, and the very first number there was number 79. The Berry Street Theater. A theater? It looked like a theater, all right. A big standing poster said, "A Fairy Tale Romance. An original musical by Morton B. Custard." A line of cigarette butts led me up to the door and then into the empty lobby, where a dark, silent box office yawned in the purple light. A sign on the window said, $25, 7 p.m., 10 p.m., Tuesday to Sunday, $22.50, Saturday through Sunday matinees. Okay, that was it. Lady Luck had just jerked me up and down like a yo-yo, and I hoped she was having fun. For my part, it stank. I'd come all the way over here to come to a dead end. No Felix, no Sandy, no Glory, no dice. Music leaked out at me from somewhere inside the theater. An audience seemed to laugh. Well, good for them. For 25 smackers, they deserved a couple of laughs, including the one on me. I sat for a moment feeling totally, and not inexplicably, depressed, not to mention extremely hungry. I squinted around the floor. A half-eaten chocolate bar beckoned me like the bright poison apple in Snow White. Just a couple of bites of chocolate and a cat, any cat, would start to feel as sick as a dog. And a dog would start to feel sick as a corpse. Even so, even knowing, I was tempted to take a bite, and I wondered once again about the dark valleys of pleasure, and the call of forbidden fruit, and why celery sticks are good for you and chicken bones, magnificent chicken bones, are bad. I was picturing a chicken bone, succulent, supreme, and looked up, half expecting, I suppose, to see a witch or some regulatory demon, but instead, to my incredible relief, I saw a wall. There were posters along the wall. The first showed a lady who was something out of a dream. She had the blue eyes, and the blonde hair, and the warm smile, and the gown of a fairy princess on her way to the palace ball. This lady was some lady, and it wasn't only her beauty, it was some fine spark of spirit behind her eyes. She was radiant and charming. She was merciful and bright. She was anything and everything you'd happen to want in a lady if you happened to want a lady. I didn't. I'm a cat. But I was momentarily dazzled. I blinked and lifted my eyes. Little letters at the tip-top of the poster offered her name, and I eagerly jumped to look at it. Mary? This was the first jump. Beth? That was the second. I heard myself up again and sounded out, Despain? Despain? I just hung there, suspended in disbelief, and then crashed like a dropped teacup. I couldn't believe my eyes. Felix's manager was M.B. Despain, but it couldn't be Mary Beth. No, that was impossible. Maybe she had a brother, Mickey Bob, Martin Burt. I paced around distractedly and scowled at the other walls. And that's when I spotted him, standing there, towering, with one of those theatrical-looking daggers in his hand, and the sneer of a grinning wolf. The same nasty face that had menaced me back at Candlewick. The same dusty turtleneck. The same hooded eyes. Only this time they glared at me glassily out of a photograph. The name at the top of it was John Casey Jones.